Planet Institute.
Welcome to today's episode of R&D Unplugged. R&D Unplugged is a podcast from the Learning Planet Institute dedicated to discussing with our researchers on the impact of their work in a simple way. My name is Annalena and I'm your host of today. With me I have Muki Haklay. He's a professor at UCL in London and team lead on citizen science at the Learning Planet Institute. Welcome, Muki.
Hello, nice to be here.
We are happy to have you here. Your research is about different aspects of community creation, of geographical and environmental information, especially participatory mapping and citizen science. Before we get deeper into this, let me maybe ask you first a more unconventional question. If your research had a theme song, what would it be and why?
Okay, so connected to what I talked about recently, I would think about Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Is the song.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that it's kind of presenting participation and equality. So it's got a huge amount of covers by a lot of people who try to do it in different language, in different ways. You kind of think, why is this song really reaching the top? And it doesn't have a good reason. It just kind of got into the momentum and then became more and more popular and recorded and listened to. So it's kind of an interesting example.
Yeah, I think we all know that song in different covers. So I think that makes us even want to know more about citizen science. But how did you actually, or what inspired you to pursue this particular research topic around citizen science and crowdsourcing?
So my original research was interested in public access to environmental information. And very early on, I noticed that a lot of the documents and approaches that people were presenting, I'm talking about the end of the 90s, was to release the information and then expect people to do things with it. But what are they expected to do with it? And who are exactly the people that are expected to do something with it? So I had no choice in terms of the direction the research was leading than to go out and ask people, what are you doing with this information? Why does it interest you? What would you like to do with the environmental information? And also very quickly, I discovered that people don't like the information that the authorities are producing and thinking, I can actually contribute to this information. And between that and citizen science, the distance is very short.
Okay, interesting. Maybe could you just elaborate a bit more? What do you mean? What people did with the information? So which kind of activities are we talking here about?
Yeah, so for example, people that were looking at air quality maps of their city were thinking, I'm not sure that represents what I'm feeling or what I'm sensing in my specific area. I think that I'm seeing a queue of trucks standing in front of a scrapyard, and I think that they are polluting the area. I need to check that they are doing that, but that doesn't appear on the official map. Or, for example, noise mapping from the authorities, same thing. I don't think that reflects exactly the noise that I'm getting from the nearby airport. Maybe I can collect some information and see what is the real level of noise that I'm experiencing.
Okay, so then every citizen can just participate in adding their information. You mentioned air quality. That brings me a bit to my next question. How does your research around the citizen science, the crowdsourcing, contribute to the issues that the world is facing nowadays?
So since this early start, I would say somewhere in the 90s, when also the term citizen science became popular in the sense that we understand it today, it's actually got traction and been progressing across the world in different ways. So now it is accepted by the European Environment Agency, by the UN Environmental Program, by UNESCO in terms of integrating it into university. And you're seeing it as a way to integrate the wider population in different research projects. So it's not anymore just environmental issues, it's health issues, it's educational issues, it's a lot of other things. And it's using all the abilities that we now have to get information from people in different ways and get them involved in the production of scientific and research knowledge in multiple ways. And that's increased the ability to do research at scales that it's impossible to do otherwise. Just think about the classic examples even of bird watching. You just can't have researchers covering the whole area of the United States or the whole area of Europe, regardless of how much funding they have, but with citizens, with participants, you can actually do that.
Okay, so you mentioned already environmental challenges and also health issues where actually the citizen science is participating. Could you maybe give us some more precise examples so that the listeners can understand in which areas the citizen science projects nowadays participate, in which topics that are challenging to us right now?
Yes, a really very good example for the abilities of citizens to actually change the information and the way that we understand the world happened during the COVID pandemic. So a group of people in King's College who were already developing with a company an app about nutrition and health and other things realized that as COVID happened, they can use the app in order to ask people about their symptoms. So it's called the Zoe app. And very quickly it reached over 1 million people that contribute to it. We know from research that probably the people that regularly provided information every day was somewhat smaller, but still there was a very large number of people that were reporting every day about their symptoms, either healthy or if they were getting COVID. And what this app started showing is that when people are getting COVID, they have the issue of smell and taste that are being impacted as you get COVID. And that's something that didn't appear in the original list of the symptoms of COVID. And because of this app and contribution of people by it, the list of what are the symptoms of COVID changed dramatically. So that's an example of real example that came by people reporting about their health every day. Also information about birds and the health of the population of birds in the UK is being updated every year with something called the Big Garden Birdwatch, which is a project run by the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. It's the last weekends of January. People look through the window for 1 hour. A lot of time it's with their kids, and there are about 500,000 people who participated in that. And because of the scale of it, you actually get information about which species are rising, which are disappearing, what is the health of the population in general. So that's another example of very extensive citizen science that engage people at different level of knowledge and still produce really good information just because of the sheer size of it.
Thank you so much. I think both examples are really tangible for the listeners, for everyone who's even maybe not connected to research, and also shows how everyone can be part of it. And I guess that also participants are more connected to research. They maybe trust more in the results, or they get a better feeling for the scientific work, for the methodology. I think this is really great. What are maybe some key findings or insights from your research? What can you share with us? What was maybe surprising or...
So less surprising, but something that I'm very pleased with is research that I've done with the Extreme Citizen Science Group at UCL. And we started with a project of co-creating citizen science with non-literate hunter-gatherers. So communities that don't use reading and writing and trying to address problems that concern them and that can help their life in different ways, such as communicating with logging companies to define which area won't be used, or a report about illegal poaching or other different things. And we started developing apps and methodologies in order to enable such communities to engage in such process. And within now 10 years of doing that, we managed to cover over 20 cases. And the big story about that is a demonstration that, of course, with resources and effort, it is possible to go to any community on Earth and co-create with them a knowledge production project. It is basically possible. It's sometimes difficult. It sometimes will take you a lot of time. It will take resources. Different cases, the more marginalized the group, the more effort you need to take in order to make it meaningful. But it is possible. And I feel very proud about managing to demonstrate this kind of aspects of citizen science.
I think it's a really important point also you mentioned the marginalized groups, because these are a lot of times the people we forget they are kind of excluded from research, and maybe citizen science there could be a good entrance door to really co-design with them to answer to their needs. I just want to take a step back. You mentioned the extreme citizen science group. What is that?
Yeah, so that's a name that now I can say was created because of the attractiveness of that. It was submitted originally for an engineering funding call, and you needed the name that will attract the people on the panel, so we went with the extreme. But actually it's got the serious side of it, that it's the extremities of citizen science. It's where the edge of what citizen science is. So a lot of citizen science, when you just open up a call and ask people to join in, you will get the highly educated, well-off people joining in and contributing to the process. And that's great, actually. I think that that's absolutely brilliant, that the people who got PhDs and masters and are now in the workplace can reconnect to science through citizen science. And the recruitment of these people is actually quite easy. You send a message through the media, and those people will say, hey, I want to contribute to such a project. But then you can use the resources that you have in order to reach out to the group that will not usually engage in the project. So you dedicate your effort into making it wider. And that's valuable both in, say, coverage, because, for example, if we're talking about this Zoe app, you really want to know what are the symptoms among less strong population or more ethnically diverse population in order to have the right health intervention that you reach them. Or if you want to understand the population of birds in the UK, you don't just want to know what it's like in the families where there is a garden and a big garden that they can have the birds in, but you actually want to know what it's like in the poorer part of the country and the more urban areas of the part of the country and so on. So you really need both for the science and for society to make an effort to engage people. So the extreme citizen science is saying, let's reach out to those extreme, to the places where without an effort, citizen science will not happen, and demonstrate that it can happen.
Okay, yeah, because I can imagine otherwise you have a lot of biases also in your results. Maybe could you share some precise strategies to actually diversify the participants? What can someone who wants to create a citizen science project do to really make sure to have not so many biases maybe in it, to really diversify the participation? What can we do?
So you don't always have to do that. That's always my first point. There are cases where you say, I need to classify some information, and actually by speeding up medical research, I will help everyone by understanding the disease fast. And for example, again, the example of COVID, once we have the symptom, that helps everyone, regardless if they are rich or poor, about their symptoms. But if you do want, and there are, as we said, a lot of projects where you do need to reach out, is how you tell the message and how you reach out to different groups. Not all groups will respond to the same things, so the assumption that everyone can want to contribute to science, it's not always true. Some people are suspicious of science. Let's say indigenous groups in different places have a very good reason to be suspicious of scientists parachuting into their area, extracting some information and going out. And that's happened, say, in biology and in other areas, medical drugs and things like that. And you want to think about how to do it in a way that people will understand why it's relevant to them, and you need to think why it is relevant to them. So you need always to think like a participant, think like what are the issues that concern them and how you can make it relevant to them. And sometimes it won't be relevant to them. So sometimes you'll even need to think about paying participants in order to engage them, especially from, say, marginalized groups that need to work in order to make a living. So in those cases, it is justified to think even about payment.
Okay, that's really an individual decision. Who do I want to target and how do I approach this? Now, we heard a lot about your research. You gave us already a lot of examples about medical approaches, environmental issues. Maybe we can go even more deeper and more precise into it. How do you make the bridge between your research and real life? And maybe you can even share an anecdote or a story where your research directly impacted or even changed someone's life.
That's interesting. A lot of time, those are the things that will be community-led and very place-based type of research. So, for example, when a community, as I mentioned before, decide that there is a lot of noise from the local airport, and the local airport is suggesting to increase the number of flights, and they're doing a big campaign to record the level of noise and demonstrate that across their area the level of noise is very significant. And not just that, the fact that they are putting the effort and recording the information show that there is a big crowd of people that are suffering from the noise every day. So the measurement is serving two purposes. One purpose is demonstrate that there is an issue. The second purpose is demonstrate I care about it. And that helps several communities across the world to do this type of project and to reduce or to demonstrate the concern about airport expansion and other aspects like that. There have been cases of communities changing the operation of industrial facilities next to them and other examples that exist. So it is possible to change things with the right effort.
So it's really linked actually to our real life, to many different examples actually. I have one question, since one of our listeners are coming from the educational sector, learning and teaching. So what do you think could be an example, or do you maybe have a story, a project, ongoing project, which is really linked to education, learning, teaching, where citizen science can be used?
Citizen science is a really good way to get into science. And the reason for that is that unlike the kind of top-down science that a lot of time is integrated into education, it actually can throw out all kind of unexpected and uncertain results. Now, that can be sometimes challenging to teach, and you all have to say, I don't know, which is a great way of understanding the world by saying that you don't know. But there have been a lot of projects, and there are more and more projects that are available to integrate into teaching of science, but also of other areas like geography or history or other things where the students are involved in carrying out a citizen science project. They are learning more about how to do the research and what is reliable and how you validate information and all the rest of it with the uncertainty of the world displayed in front of them. So that's a really great learning experience. And there was a great example in the UK a few years ago called the Open Air Laboratory, targeted specifically to school children. And there is a lot of material that still exists from that. It was a lot about environmental issues, so measuring air quality with lichens or understanding the direction of the weather by making balloons fly and other things like that. And there is still a lot of instruction out there that teachers can pick up and use in their teaching.
That sounds super interesting. I think also for students, it's really interesting to build their own citizen science project, to come out with their own data. Maybe for the teachers out there who now got motivated to include citizen science projects into their classroom, where can a teacher start to get information from? Are there platforms? Are there information gathered somewhere? So if someone wants to start now in this classroom, including it, where to start searching?
A good place to start is the European Citizen Science Association platform, which is called EU-citizen.science. And you can find there all kind of resources and information about it. There is also linked to it something called the European Citizen Science Academy. That's actually the project that we are leading here at the Learning Planet Institute. But there are also specific resources that are dedicated to teaching and learning. So the European Citizen Science Association, which you can find at ecsa.ngo, got a working group that is dedicated to education and school, and people there exchange information about different activities. There is also a website in the US that contains a lot of teaching material that I'll share in the links to the show.
Okay, so to all the students and teachers out there, there's no reason to not get involved. You heard there's a lot of information, a lot of resources you can use, and to include everyone into science projects and build your own citizen science project in your school, in your classroom, wherever you're listening from right now. So let's pretend I'm 20 years old, Muki, and I want to change the world for the better. Why should I engage in research? And why should I choose your research topic all around citizen science and crowdsourcing?
So I would say if you're 20 years old and you think about changing the world, think about the ability of not doing things on your own. If you will go towards the direction of citizen science and crowdsourcing, you will not end up in a lab all by yourself, standing and thinking about how to solve the issue or why something didn't work. You'll have other people to interact with and work with in different ways. Citizen science and crowdsourcing is a method that you can use in different cases. It's not relevant for all the cases, but to date, I haven't come across yet a scientific area where it was impossible to integrate those approaches. And it just makes things more interesting and challenging and more ideas and make science, the activity of it, instead of isolated activity into a collaborative activity. And there is a lot of collaboration among scientists. We are seeing bigger and bigger and bigger groups of scientists solving scientific problems. But there is also huge world around you of people who are educated and interested and can join and help you with your research. And why not let them join in?
Yeah, so together it always makes more fun.
Yeah.
And I really like the point when you said it's about not doing things on your own. I think especially nowadays in a world which can be overwhelming with the news, the challenges we are facing right now, it's nice actually to solve them together and not just on your own. So I think that was a really nice and clear message to the young researchers, future researchers maybe, out there. That actually wraps up today's episode of the R&D Unplugged podcast. I'm Annalena, I'm your host of today, and a huge thank you to you, Muki, for sharing all this valuable insights and expertise with us. And also a big thank you to all our listeners who joined us for this episode today. R&D Unplugged is a Learning Planet Institute podcast. This episode was produced by Annalena Neurohr and Shahakna Starr. Recorded by Edouard Picard and edited by Jean-Marc Sauvin. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find all of our podcasts and further information about all our activities on our website at learningplanetinstitute.org/podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Learning Planet Institute.